7. The 3 cold calling success factors. To maximize your chances of scheduling face-to-face meetings with new business prospects, you will need to excel in 3 areas: attitude, energy, and tonality, outreach system, relevant business reason. In sales trainings, I often ask the group which one of these 3 areas they think is the most important. The answer is almost always the same. The vast majority thinks the RBR is the difference maker, following the notion that what you say is more important for a successful cold call than how you say it and how often you say it. If they only had some magic words or phrases, their prospects would automatically relent and everything would fall into place. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, it doesn't work like that. There's no secret cold calling language that, once you learn it, will change your life, even if many books, videos, and seminars promise it. Becoming an excellent cold caller means being excellent in all 3 of the mentioned areas, which are all equally important. You can't win by being great in 2 areas and very weak in the 3rd one. You won't get the meeting if you have the best and most customized RBR, but sound like a 13-year-old on the phone. You can have the most structured approach, but may still fail because of what you're saying to the buyer. You can have the best attitude and all the energy in the world, but without a system to keep track of your phone conversations, you won't succeed. Yes, that means that more than half of your cold calling success will depend on things other than what you're actually saying. Attitude, energy, and tonality. Nothing is worse than a salesperson who sounds like a salesperson. I'm not even talking about the actual words you're using. We will get to these when we cover good RBRs. I'm talking about how you sound, including the tone of your voice, your speech patterns and pace, and your modulation. Making sure your tonality matches the words you're using is essential to coming across not like a telemarketer, but as the business resource your future partners are looking for. Well, this will sound a little different for every salesperson, and while there are certainly many different speaking styles that can be successful, Jeb Blunt, in his book Fantastical Prospecting, does an excellent job summarizing what demonstrates this kind of businesslike and confident demeanor on the phone. Speaking with normal inflection and a deeper pitch is more effective than speaking with a high-pitched voice. Appropriate voice modulation with emotional emphasis on the right words and phrases is more effective than speaking really loudly or really softly throughout the phone call. Speaking at a relaxed pace, using appropriate pauses, is more effective than speaking too fast. Coming across in a friendly tone with a smile in your voice will get you further than a tense or defensive tone of voice. Direct speech that gets right to the point will generate better results than a nervous tone of voice with too many filler words like ums or uhs. We already spent some time on the necessary attitude and confidence of sales champions in the commit section. While it applies throughout the entire sales process, these intangibles are probably most important during the connect phase. The last thing anyone wants is to do business with someone who comes across as phlegmatic. If prospects sense fear, nervousness, or lack of energy, they will shut you down within 10 seconds. Energy sells because it conveys enthusiasm and confidence in the product or service you're selling and in yourself as a business person. Of course, too much energy and too much confidence can backfire, as you run the risk of being perceived as too pushy. Be on and prepared. Once you dial the number, you need to be on. I've seen sales aces use different tactics that help them ensure a consistently higher level of energy, like standing up or at least sitting up straight when making cold calls, using headsets to be able to talk with both hands and take notes more easily, or actively trying to put a smile on their face when they start the call, transferring the smile to their voice. One of the biggest energy and confidence boosts you can get is simply being prepared. Think back to your high school or college days and what a difference it made when you chose to study hard and, as a result, knew all the facts on the day of the test. Your energy and confidence levels were higher simply because of your preparedness. Knowing your talking points, anticipating potential objections, doing your research on the prospect, maybe even role-playing an important call to one of your dream leads with your manager or a coworker will all boost your confidence. That confidence will come across on the call. Ride the wave. The biggest energy boost you will feel is right after you've set up a meeting with a new prospect. Your adrenaline is flowing and your confidence level will be up. Don't stop now. Your chance to set up another prospect is never higher than on your next call. Double down and keep dialing. Know your numbers. How will you mentally deal with the unavoidable hang-ups and the deflating "I'm not interested" and "call me in 6 months" responses from a prospect, though? How will you react if for weeks you simply cannot get through to the decision maker at what you deem to be a great prospect? First of all, don't take it personally. People are not rejecting you personally when they refuse to engage on a call. They're just rejecting the offer you're making them. A 100% success rate doesn't exist, and it certainly doesn't exist in sales. For sales champions, that's absolutely okay. It's acceptable because they know their numbers and how many calls they have to make on average to set up a meeting. Reggie Jackson struck out 2,597 times and had a .262 batting average, failing 3 out of 4 times on average. Yet he's one of the most successful players who ever stepped up to the plate, being inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1993. You have to look at cold calling the same way. On average, every no gets you closer to the next yes. And while this is certainly one of the oldest sales cliches, it is also still true. Outreach system. Plan your outreach work and then work the plan. It starts with determining one of the most important metrics in new business sales, the number of first-time face-to-face meetings you're planning to set up with new prospects every week. What that number is, of course, depends on your industry and market as well as your product and service. Even within the same sales team, these numbers will vary by salesperson as many factors play into them: length of existing account list, focus categories, etc. This weekly goal should be put in writing and come from you, with coaching input from your manager. You are the one who needs to buy into it and be in charge of exceeding it week after week. Track this number, even throughout the week. If you're pacing behind by Wednesday, increase your outreach time, for example, with additional cold calling hours on Thursday and Friday. There's a direct correlation between this metric and your new business success in the future. But in order to manage your business effectively, it needs to be accurate. If you feed your CRM system with new business meetings that were never really confirmed or were kept purposefully vague from the prospect side, only to get your manager off your back, you're not doing yourself a favor. It's amazing how quickly a "call me back later in the week" in the prospect's email reply can turn into "strategic discovery meeting Thursday 3 p.m. in your CRM. By doing this, you're also reducing the accuracy of your individual conversion and closing ratios. This all results in you not being able to play the numbers game, as discussed earlier. There is never a perfect time. When is the best time to make a cold call? A cold call is more effective in the morning or in the afternoon. Is early in the week or Friday better for a walk-in to an office? When are prospects more likely to open my emails and read them? The amount of advice on these topics in articles, books, or YouTube videos is astounding. With a couple of exceptions we will get to, it's also mostly irrelevant. The best time to reach out is right now. Cold call reluctance is one of the biggest issues affecting the average new business salesperson. There's always a better time to call for them, often not much more than a made-up excuse not to pick up the phone this second. Of course, there are certain tactics that will improve your conversion ratio. For example, it absolutely does make sense to switch up the time of your daily cold calling hours. Calling at a different hour every morning will increase your chance to actually connect with a prospect. It also makes sense to call hard-to-reach prospects during the 5-minute span before the top or the bottom of the hour. Executives typically start meetings or conference calls at the top of the hour or 30 minutes past the hour, and the likelihood they will be at their desk or at least not busy in another meeting is potentially a little higher during these moments. This all makes logical sense, but overall, timing a call is a losing strategy. Salespeople who cold call daily and consistently will always be more successful than those who are waiting for the perfect moment to connect. Develop a cold calling routine. Your cold calling success will increase by developing certain routines. For starters, set up cold calling hours in your Outlook calendar as non-cancelable appointments with yourself, and then stick to them. I know how tempting it is to skip a calling session to instead write a proposal, attend a brainstorm meeting, or put out a fire with your most important client. Don't do it. A typical cold calling session in a business-to-business scenario lasts about 45 minutes to an hour. If you schedule 2 of these daily, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, you will have more than enough time to get all the other, most likely more enjoyable work done. And even your most important client will understand and be willing to wait for 60 minutes to get a call back from you. If you need some inspiration to form your routine, look no further than Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can find several interviews and speeches online in which he takes on the topic, using examples from his bodybuilding and acting days to make his point. Here are a few of Arnold's tips that are particularly relevant to cold calling. Make it a daily activity so it becomes a habit you don't even have to think about, so that it almost starts automatically. It is actually easier to work out 6 times a week instead of once or twice a week. Likewise, it's actually easier to cold call if you do it daily. Break up the routine into several manageable chunks of shorter duration. 2 shorter cold calling sessions a day make more sense than 1 longer session. 45 focused minutes twice a day should do it in most industries. Win the morning. Schwarzenegger talks a lot about doing full-fledged squats with 500 pounds at 5:30 a.m. when he was getting ready to compete in the Mr. Universe contest. While you don't have to go to that kind of extreme, starting to call early is important. Shut off your email, review who you're planning to call, and start dialing. Warm up by calling a few friendly customers first, then keep the momentum going. Nothing will have a bigger impact on having a successful day than a fruitful cold calling session in the morning, so don't push it off. Once you start procrastinating, you will never catch up. As your day progresses, unexpected things will get in your way, and before you know it, the day is over. Early morning calls work. You have a higher chance of reaching key executives before 8 a.m. than after. Calling people early also conveys to them that you're a self-motivated person they can count on once they're doing business with you. Go for one more. Doesn't matter if it's one more bench press or one more cold call. Your results will improve, especially if you look at it over time. 1 cold call more per cold calling session adds up to around 500 additional cold calls per year. I've heard of some successful salespeople following the mantra of 8 before 8 and 5 after 5. They make 8 additional cold calls before 8 a.m. and 5 cold calls after 5 p.m. How can that not get you results? Welcome to heavy metal sales. In a business environment where decision makers are bombarded by hundreds of messages per week, it's not easy to stand out. It will not be uncommon at all for your first couple of messages, voicemail, email, or whatever other tactic you're using, to be completely missed by the prospect. As a result, you need to get used to being persistent. Unfortunately, less experienced salespeople are often hesitant to reach out to a prospect too often, as if the person on the other end is sitting there keeping count of the number of outreach efforts, determining that this guy is a pest. As a result, they let way too much time go by between calls or emails and never make an impact. Sales outreach is not about being pushy, it's about being professionally persistent. Look at your attempts to connect with a new prospect as the equivalent of a full-blown marketing campaign that uses several different tactics over a short period. Several years ago, Jürgen Klopp, at the time of writing manager of the Liverpool British Premier League football or soccer club, coined the term heavy metal football. It describes a type of play characterized by high pressing, quick passing, and a very hard work rate. It is an in-your-face style of football, fast, aggressive, and exciting. When executing your marketing campaign to score the meeting with your prospect, you will need a similar mindset, a heavy metal sales mindset, full pressure, many touch points, and a high level of perseverance. Heavy metal sales means creating 10 touch points in 10 workdays. Rookie salesperson, I'm not sure I can think of 10 ways to get in touch with a prospect. It's actually not that hard, but it's work. You can, for example, send an introductory email, aka a seed email, connect on LinkedIn, leave a voicemail teasing an idea, send a case study by email or by snail mail, send a LinkedIn message with a new insight, leave another voicemail with a different reason to meet with you, send a handwritten note, do an in-person walk-in to the prospect's office, and many, many other things. We will get to some creative examples to set up meetings in Chapter 11. Rookie salesperson, won't people get annoyed? Not if you switch up your message. There is power in making your attempts over a very short time. But be smart about it and mix it up. Of course, you don't want to leave 2 voicemails per day for a week. That would be considered stalking. But be persistent. You would be surprised how often prospects apologize to me for not returning my voicemail or not replying to my emails when I eventually got them on the phone or met them in person. You might think you're annoying them with your outreach attempts, but most of the time your attempts don't even register with them. Your cold calling attempts run parallel to these 10 touch points, as shown in Figure 7.1. If you've developed the routine of scheduling and keeping 2 cold calling sessions per day or 10 a week, that means you're adding another 20 opportunities to connect with your prospect live over the course of 2 work weeks. We will discuss how to do that in Chapter 8. The heavy metal sales approach is even more important if the brand awareness of your company or your company's product is not very high. You first might have to increase the prospect's familiarity with you and your company before the prospect will engage with you. In sales, consistently relying on one tactic or method, usually the one where the salesperson expects the least amount of resistance and rejection, which these days mostly means relying only on email or social media, will generate mediocre results at best. I've seen people conduct these heavy metal sales campaigns with several people at the same company at the same time, not in the form of mass emails, but with an individualized approach. Of course, that is even more work, but for your dream leads, absolutely worth it. Tips for focused cold calling. Most salespeople are more effective and efficient if they group their calls by segment, making calls to prospects in one industry first, followed by calls to prospects in another industry. That helps because similar companies usually share a comparable set of issues and challenges, and you can use many of the same RBRs and case studies, saving you time. Here are several other tips to keep you focused during your cold calling sessions. Find a quiet place without interruptions instead of calling from your office desk. Many salespeople are actually hesitant to make cold calls while their office neighbors could potentially be listening. Don't feel bad about it for a second. The best salespeople I've worked with don't make their cold calls at their desk. Your productivity will be much higher in a conference room or a cold calling pod. With laptops or iPads or working remotely, that's very easy to do. You're only doing one thing during a cold calling session, and that is cold calling. This is not the time to send seed emails or LinkedIn messages. Your email alerts should be off so you don't get tempted to open one every 5 minutes. Your cell phone should be silenced and ideally out of sight. This is not the time to multitask. Complete your research before you start calling. Then all you need to do is pull up the information about your prospect in Salesforce, get the phone number, and start dialing. Keep track of what type of RBR you were using when you reached out. Ideally, you capture this in your CRM system so you can easily go back and look before you reach out the next time with a different RBR, or before you actually meet the prospect for the first time. You need to know what hook got you in the door. Capture all information you receive on these calls, such as the name of the gatekeeper. I found that salespeople make these notes more efficiently by hand. Then, once they're done with the cold calling session, they enter them into their CRMs. Your relevant business reason. To become successful in setting up face-to-face meetings with new business prospects, you need to master the art of crafting an effective RBR. The core element of your cold calling script, as well as the seed email and LinkedIn messages we will create in the next chapters. While we were focused on the how and how often earlier, an RBR is all about what you will be saying or writing. Even the best and most customized RBR doesn't guarantee you a meeting, but it does improve your odds. And that's what sales is all about, doing all the little things right throughout the entire sales process to maximize your chances of making a sale. Think of the RBR as the key talking point you will be using when connecting with the prospect, the reason most relevant to the prospect, not you. Or, as Mike Weinberg describes it in his excellent book, New Sales Simplified, it's a delicious, mouth-watering tease that creates a strong hunger for the main course, which is the face-to-face meeting we are pursuing. Short, concise, and compelling. One of the cardinal rules at the start. Your RBR needs to be short, concise, and compelling. And while you might think this is logical, after all, you're interrupting your prospect's day, you would be surprised how often this rule is broken, not just by new salespeople, but also by more experienced sellers. It sometimes seems that because they have more knowledge about the details of their product or service, they want to cram too much into one RBR. As a result, you see cold call scripts that take 30 seconds to make a point, or seed emails that are so long the person on the receiving end needs to do as much scrolling as reading. When reaching out to prospects, you win in the first 10 seconds, or you lose. In person, it might even be less time than that, because of how quickly the brain reacts. You have very little room for error, and once you stumble at the beginning, it's very hard to recover. The RBR shouldn't really change much based on the outreach channel you're using, phone, email, in person, etc. Yes, the message will change as part of the cadence of our heavy metal outreach campaign. And as a result, the prospect will receive different RBRs over the course of 10 days. But don't throw your best RBRs out the window only because they're using a different channel. I've seen too many salespeople develop a very solid RBR for a cold call over the phone, only to completely abandon it when they stopped in at the prospect's office. Suddenly, the effective RBR morphed into, "Do you have 10 minutes for me?" making them sound like every other salesperson. There are 4 effective, relevant business reasons. 4 different categories account for 99% of effective RBRs, as shown in figure 7.2. Your success rate in getting a prospect to meet with you will increase dramatically if you can identify someone in your network who's connected to your prospect and is willing to make an introduction for you. You can do this by email or maybe even in person over lunch or dinner. Even if your network ultimately does not make a direct introduction, using the mutual acquaintance's name in your outreach as part of the RBR is also very effective. That's why it always makes sense to check LinkedIn and see if you and your prospect have a mutual connection. While introductions and referrals will probably make up the minority of your RBRs, they are exactly the ones that sales champions explore first. New ideas and new concepts are a very effective method of attracting the interest of a prospect. Maybe it is a promotional idea you came up with to help your prospect during a new product launch. Maybe it is a more process-driven innovation that can help your prospect reduce the production cycle by 40%. Maybe it is a concept for a sponsorship of an event your company is producing that targets an audience the prospect covets. Be careful though. Don't give away too much initially. If you flesh out the entire idea or concept on your cold call, your prospect might not see the need to meet with you in person. When you lead with ideas, it's also important to try to create some type of urgency by highlighting limited availability and exclusivity. For idea RBRs, I like to use the first word or phrases imagine, what if, picture this, or right now. Using an in-segment success story in your outreach is a very effective method to stand out from the sales pack. Prospects want to know what is working for other companies in the industry or territory. They want to find out if they have been missing out on things by not partnering with your company earlier. They might even think they can gain some knowledge from you about what their competitors are doing. One specific success story with clear results will be more effective here than just saying, "We have a proven track record with other companies in your industry." An insight is a piece of relevant information that the prospect will most likely, to the best of your knowledge, not be aware of and will find intriguing and interesting. It could be a research fact about consumer behavior or a statistic or a trend that influences an entire industry. Many times, to make the insight more believable, it involves an actual number or percentage. It's also important to understand what an insight is not. It is not a fact about your company. Insights are effective because they immediately increase your confidence level in the eyes of the prospect, which helps you reduce resistance by making prospects feel you could be a resource they are able to count on. You should always strive to have at least a couple of RBRs ready for each prospect. Sometimes, if you run into a lot of resistance and have to battle several objections, you will be forced to use up all your RBRs on the first phone call. Other times, you will use them in your follow-up attempts on other channels in order to find different angles that might pique the prospect's interest. And many bad ones. Notice what did not make the list of potential RBRs. Leading with the fact that your company is number one, the best, the biggest, the cheapest, or any other superlative about you or the company you represent. RBRs that offer nothing more than wasting the prospect's time, like, "I would love to stop by to tell you more about our company," or "I would love to set up a meeting to find out more about your business and your needs." Something everyone already knows dressed up as an insight. During the coronavirus pandemic, homeschooling is expected to increase. Comes to mind. Duh. A list of features, figures, and facts no one cares about. Something sneaky that might get you in the door but will backfire later. In the radio and TV business, that could be the old, "We would love to have you as a guest on the show," when what the salesperson really wants to meet about is how to sell an advertising campaign for money. Never hide the fact that your goal is to get the prospect as a customer. A detailed description of the solution you're offering. Less experienced salespeople make this mistake all the time. Remember, the goal is to sell them on meeting face-to-face with you, not to sell them on the solution, at least not yet. What's in it for them, their benefit, is more important than explaining how your offering works. Openings like, "I'm following up on my email," or "Did you get the email I sent you?" both make it much too easy for the prospect to end the call quickly. "I didn't get it. Can you please resend it? Thanks and goodbye." Ouch. This response is very hard to recover from, so why put yourself in this position in the first place? If you did send a prior email, just treat the cold call as if you're reaching out for the first time. If prospects remember your email, they will most likely mention it. "Didn't you send me an email?" With a quick, "Yes, what did you think about it?" you're in the middle of a conversation that you can then steer toward additional RBRs. In the media world, statements like, "I saw your ad in," or "I heard your commercial on" at the beginning of a call or email are probably some of the most overused and least effective RBRs you can choose. How are these in any shape or form relevant for or compelling to the prospect? Avoid salesy language. Your goal in sales is always to be perceived as a business person, not as a salesperson a couple of rungs down the ladder. Busy prospects want to deal with peers, not salespeople who sound like they are selling something. Many phrases and words can paint you into that sales corner quickly and have no place in an RBR. It's an honor speaking with you. We are proud to. Words and phrases like unique, one-of-a-kind, state-of-the-art, groundbreaking, world-class, best-in-class, amazing, game-changer, innovative solution, etc. There are many more words and phrases like this, but you get the idea. They're not only way too overused for you to stand out, they're also mostly an exaggeration and irrelevant. You would never use them in real life when talking to a friend. "Let's watch this one-of-a-kind movie." So why would you use them here? There's also a special place in sales hell for salespeople who add the word "just" to pretty much everything they're asking or saying. Just could be one of the worst words to use when you want to make an impression, not only in sales, in many areas of life. "I just want to take you out for dinner," when trying to ask out a woman, doesn't sound as confident as "let's have dinner." Likewise, sentences like, "I'm just calling to find out if you're interested in seeing a proposal." "This is just a," "I'm just checking in," "I'm just following up," and other "I am just" sentences don't do much more than tempt the prospect to press the delete button or get off the phone quickly. On the other hand, words like accelerate, amplify, strengthen, maximize, improve, imagine, share, save, grow, or partner, just to give a few examples, are much stronger and convey your desired image as a business person and not a salesperson more effectively. Take the prospect's background into account. Always craft your RBR with an eye on the buyer's backgrounds, experience, and current positions and roles. What do you think are their priorities? What will get their attention? What could be their current concerns and potential objections? These days, you can find most information on background and expertise on LinkedIn, and some online tools like Winmo even offer potentially helpful personality insights on many buyers. As an example, if your LinkedIn search determines your general manager prospect is a CPA and came up the finance route, and Winmo is telling you this particular executive is analytical, pragmatic, skeptical, and collected, your best RBR is probably not a very creative, outrageous right-brain idea. Instead, you might be better off leading with a case study or insight that includes hard data on items like ROI, expense savings, or margins. Case study: relevant business reasons for Rebecca Gyms. You check LinkedIn for any mutual connections with Tracy Ranner, the Chief Marketing Officer, and come up short. You decide to call Rob Myers, an old acquaintance of yours who runs an advertising agency in Los Angeles, and ask him if he knows Tracy or anyone else at Rebecca Gyms. It turns out that he had worked with Tracy on a couple of projects in an old job. He gives you permission to use his name in your outreach. In addition, you craft one RBR for each of the other RBR areas: idea, insight, in-segment success story, that we are planning to use during our heavy metal outreach strategy shown in Figure 7.3. Figure 7.3, 4 effective relevant business reasons for Rebecca Gyms. RBR 1, Introduction. Rob Myers suggested we should connect on your planned New York expansion. The two of us worked together on several marketing projects in the Northeast. RBR 2, Idea. Imagine if we create a movement of New York women who hold each other accountable to work out on a regular basis, a movement that is led by our female radio personalities. RBR3, In-Segment Success Story. We recently helped Weiss Studio launch a new brand as well as 10 new locations here in New York, and as a result, they surpassed their initial membership goals by 43%. RBR4, Insight. 67% of New York women between the ages of 25 and 49 don't belong to a gym. That is a pool of 1.1 million potential members of Rebecca Gyms.